Welcome to my weekly video blog. If you can hear a sort of humming in the background, it's because things have turned cold this week and I actually have the heater on at the moment. This is the grotto that I have prepared for Markenfield this year, so you probably can't see very well my thread palm. My thread palm is relatively new, and you'll probably be able to see it better in future blogs when there's a little bit more light. What happens to thread palms is that the leaves, they produce like funny little bits that hang off. It looks like the leaf is dying, but it's not. Thread palms naturally, their leaves sort of shred. It's very strange, but there we are. I don't think the people that were selling it knew, because a plant this high, which is, I mean, it's in a huge pot down here, so it's not maybe as big as it looks, but you would usually expect it to cost about £30. Well, it had been reduced and reduced and reduced, and I got it for £4. So this is the first proper pot plant for Markenfield, besides the cacti which are on the stairs. And no, it's not my Christmas tree, despite the fact I've decorated. My Christmas tree is in fact sort of behind me on the floor by the door, completely blocked out by my head. I do apologise, there we are. With the cold weather came a substantial windstorm this past week, Thursday in fact, and we were hit with a cold wind that was between about 90 and 100 miles an hour. I'm pleased to say that everything in Markenfield seems to have been okay. The worst thing hit was my bathroom. Somehow the wind got in under the window and it sucked it out, which was a bit weird. So it opened the window, it opened a completely closed window. Thankfully, despite the state of the frame up there, the window itself wasn't shattered or broken. So when the window dropped down by the time I got home at the end of that day, I had an open window, but it wasn't broken, so that's okay. Other people down the street weren't quite so lucky. We had tiles blown off on all sorts of things. There were trees that have been blown over not too far away. My pine tree is fine, but I did keep my aviary shut, so completely shut. The birds were terrified, and not of the wind, but of the noise. We are in a wind tunnel here, and even when there's quite a light wind, you can hear the roaring. And it's not a whistling, it's a deep roar. It's very strange. One day I'll be able to capture it on film. But there we are. I'm going to move on to the birthdays next, because we've got rather a lot of them. We've got Mark Fiore, who I have in fact met in London. And maybe I did it in the... Oh yes, I did it on the Second States tour as well, so I've met him twice. Christopher Philpott, Lloyd Woodard, Gareth Evans, Rob Hutchinson, Warren Thompson, Dennis Bermudez, Josh Underwood, Amilcar Alves, Adrian Howe, who I remember from university, and that's it, I think. We also have an event coming up. This Friday, Joey Dial is fighting, and I just thought I'd say, I do hope that he wins there. I'm pretty sure he will, but I thought I'd, send my best as well. Today is actually a living and learning blog, and it really is the culmination of this whole year of living and learning blogs. And now I want to tell you about what happened in December 2003, the 5th of December 2003 in fact. As you know, the doctors had been telling me for a very long time that there was nothing wrong with me, and the doctor in Harrogate was the doctor that I was still under, and the reason for that is that she had promised to get an MRI scan sorted out, Not because she thought that there was anything wrong with me, okay, I want to make that quite clear, but in fact to prove that there was nothing wrong. That was the whole idea. Now, I thought that there was possibly something wrong. I did think by now, with the return of the symptoms in October, I thought that there was actually probably something wrong, and I had informed the cathedral authorities of that the moment that it happened, the moment that the symptoms returned. And that's important. That's very important, because in the next year of the Living and Learning blog, we're going to see what the effects, what the long-term effects of some of the things I've been suffering 10 years ago this year were going to end up like. And it's a bit of a horrific tale. So I am preempting things by making it quite clear what exactly happened, so that when we sort of go into a recap next year, you shall be able to see what I've said and how that sort of differs from, well, the cathedral's view of what went down. Anyway, I had a letter from her to say that she'd been unable to do that. And that was supposed to be coordinated with Harrogate Hospital, and it didn't really work out. And I was mortified at that. And that was when people persuaded me to give up my doctor in Harrogate, miles and miles away from London, and to go to a local doctor, I think it's called Harborough, but I can't remember, and see what he could do for me. This, of course, did mean that I had to give up the prochlorperazine. I wasn't convinced that was even helping me at that point in time. I hadn't been thinking that since, of course, the return of the symptoms, because the whole point was that the prochlorperazine had sort of stopped that happening. I went to him, and he didn't diagnose the anxiety disorder, but he did diagnose clinical depression. Now, the depression was probably worsened by the fact that I am affected by the seasons, and it was, December, so I'm not going to be happy anyway, really. Not enough light, not enough sunlight for me, but the symptoms were making me depressed, so it was reactive depression. The depression was not causing the symptoms at all. It was a symptom, and not even a symptom of the anxiety disorder. What happens is, if you leave something long enough without it being diagnosed and treated, it starts to create further problems. So where I had one problem in April of 2003, I now had two problems. And the one thing he could do, he told me, was treat the depression. I don't know whether it was foresight or whether it was just, luck. But the drug that he tried me on was called sertraline hydrochloride. Now, there are many, many different types of antidepressant, and they all do slightly different things. There are two categories, but they all do slightly different things. They all also have sort of their own set of problems when it comes to side effects. He warned me that sertraline is usually given to a lot of people, and it's usually dropped by a lot of people because the side effects are so very horrible, and they last for about 6 weeks before they subside to a level that's easy to cope with, but nonetheless they still the side effects still exist. And so I said, well, all right then. What I didn't know then was that sertraline is not just an antidepressant. Sertraline's actually an anti-anxiety drug as well. Now, whether he knew that or not, I don't know, but talk about killing two birds with one stone. Now, I was on a very, very high dose. I think I was between 300 and 400 milligrams, which is very high. Do you know, it's been 10 years and I am still on these drugs. Every day I pop one of these pills and everything's fine. Actually, that's not true at all. It doesn't stop me getting anxious. It doesn't always stop depressive bouts, but it does make things manageable, and it does stop the anxiety symptoms. And we discovered, even as late as this last year, that when that is messed up with the treatment for the neuralgia that I had, I still need these drugs. Do you know, I took them for a couple of days, and I left London and I went home to have an early Christmas holiday because I had to be back at the cathedral for Christmas itself. It's funny because I remember I went to stay at a university friend's house in Bradford. They were still at university. I'd left and I was in the area, so I thought I'd stay, the night with them. And I remember lying in bed, at their place in the middle of the night when the symptoms hit. And the symptoms were worse. They made the anxiety a lot worse. And I thought I was sort of going to die right then and there. It was very, very strange. And I went through 6 weeks until after the new year of 2004 before I started to feel any better at all. I was very confused at some points. I only lost one complete day. Thankfully it wasn't a day that I was due at work. I remember I woke up, I turned back over to look at the alarm clock, and 12 or whatever hours had passed, and I don't know if I'd slept or what. It's very strange because even some of my memories from back then are a bit sort of like jazzy. Very weird. I'm not on anywhere near as high a dosage. I'm only on 50 milligrams, and you can basically be on this drug for years and years and years and years. So I hear. They're not in any hurry to push me off. In fact, over the last couple of years, I've made 2 or 3 attempts at it, and they were attempts that I started. I suppose at my age, people do start to have not dependencies, but they start to maybe need medication, daily medication. And to be honest, if that's what it takes for me to be able not to be prohibited by these things, then that is the cost I am well willing to pay. I don't care about the stigma that might be involved. I know that it's not a placebo because of what happened this year when I didn't even know that the combination of drugs would lead to basically these being the antidepressants being completely redundant, and the fact that I didn't know that and yet the symptoms still came back proves to me that it wasn't a trick of my mind.